Welcome back to Ash's Reality Recap. This is Married at First Sight, the reunion part one. If this show does not get canceled after this reunion, I will be absolutely shocked. And what we considered the entire season has come to be a reality that the cast has openly admitted to creating a pact to lie and mislead the fans of this show. The fact that we have a two-part reunion on this is shocking in itself. The fact that the production team has allowed this to continue is also shocking. The show has become an absolute disaster, and we've talked about week after week just the travesty that goes on in the show, the dumpster fire that the show has become. And now here we have the entire cast, minus Michael and Chloe, telling us as a fan base that they lied, manipulated, and cheated the process for whose entertainment? Because this was not an entertaining season. This has absolutely got to go down as the worst season in Married at First Sight history, in any continent, in any country that the show is filmed. It was a disaster. None of these couples actually liked each other. You could see that throughout the filming process. There's no way you can tell me that production wasn't aware that this was going on to an extent, because you could still see that production was playing a huge role in the storylines behind the scenes because they needed some kind of drama on the screen for us to continue watching. We've talked about it in the past. We saw that Claire and Cameron had issues. Claire and Cameron seem to be pointing the fingers at each other as being the mastermind behind this farce, this lie of a season. I believe in the way that the host was calling out Claire, that Claire is the mastermind behind all of this. With Claire's background in psychology, she knows how to manipulate individuals, and you can see in the way that she's the one that always steps forward when the females have a question and starts to answer the question, or the mother bird wrapping her arms around the other females, that she is absolutely the one that was generating this entire farce behind the scenes. She saw that Cameron had a weakness, and Cameron's not, he's not blameless in all this. Every single one of these individuals sitting on this stage are to blame for what happened this season. But I truly believe that Claire is the one that created this entire story. She manipulated and utilized Cameron to get all of the other couples behind. And the only reason that Michael and Chloe weren't involved is because they started so many weeks after the process has already started. They weren't part of this entire process, which again is why all the ladies are dressed in pink and Chloe's dressed in purple, because she's not part of this disaster. Now, as far as Michael and Chloe go, look, Chloe was all in on this wedding. She was ready to stay together. She felt that she'd found a good person in Michael, but she also knew in the back of her mind that Michael wasn't part of the process. He said early on, off camera, that she didn't need to change her last name. I truly believe the way that his reaction was to her reaction, that this was a very accurate statement. Michael, to me, was on here just to build his social media background. Every time an episode come up, he did everything he could to really highlight his appearance, how he acted, how he interacted, how he talked. So I think his agenda was all on himself, and he really wasn't there for Chloe in the long run. So good for Chloe to get away from that and understand that by the end of it, that Michael wasn't the right person for her. But outside of that, this entire season was an absolute farce. Again, every one of these cast members, aside from Michael and Chloe, admitted to being part of this entire lie so that they could get through this process. They could experience the process. They could utilize this process for their own good and come out of this smelling like roses. Now, that all fell apart when God knows what happened in the middle of the season. They all started butting heads, and now we're pointing fingers because, again, it was so obvious and evident that they were lying. Now they've got to find a scapegoat. So they're going to point fingers at each other and basically say that each other was at fault for it. But truly, if you watch the interactions during this part one, Claire, hands down, is the instigator and the creator of all this, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So we'll see what part two brings next week. During this episode, we did see some one-on-one interactions, but none of those one-on-one interactions went any farther than really talking about the lies that were generated and if anything was actually real. Becca and Austin did have a pretty good experience there where we talked about Claire being on the female side. You could see that Austin definitely did a lot wrong. He acknowledged that he did a lot wrong. He didn't want to talk about what he did wrong. And after their interview, he actually told Becca, you could have went a lot harder on me out there on the interview, because Austin knew that he screwed up. Austin was aware that he screwed up, and Becca could have buried him on that stage, and she didn't. The host tried to call him out. The host tried to give him the opportunity to come free and come clean with some of the stuff that happened. Obviously, he wasn't ready for that. The host let it go. But one thing you've got to be able to do on the show is read between the lines. And when the host says there's more on this card than just some talking points, he's part of the process. He's seen the episodes. He's seen the behind the camera stuff. He knows a lot more than we know. We're just kind of speculating what we see between the lines. He's actually seen it. So when he's calling somebody out on camera, it's because he knows something that we don't know, and he's trying to give that individual the opportunity to come clean on it. And unfortunately for Claire, she didn't come clean, and for Austin, he didn't come clean. Michael and Chloe, the interview at the end, that was a good interview. Again, we see that Michael was in it for himself, and Chloe just kind of realized that she needed to move on from that process. Stay tuned next week for part 2. We'll see what happens.